Hello and welcome to the Hannah Judson Beat. I'm Hannah Judson and today's guest is Ali Spaltro of Lady Lamb. I'm super psyched to have you here today. I've got a lot of questions lined up for you, lots of things I'd love to talk about, but first I want to ask you, how are you? Oh, look, you've got a cat behind you.
My little cat Bun is probably going to be around. I can actually take her out.
Oh,
I mean, she's really going to dance for us if we let her in the shot.
Yeah, nice. That's cute.
So what did you ask? I'm sorry, she jumped right in. What did you just ask me? I got so distracted.
How are you?
Oh, I'm actually pretty well. I am in Brooklyn and the weather is changing for the better. And so I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Good. Also like weather changing for the better. We got a little bit of sunshine and that is like the key factor, changes everything. We've had a lot of rain. And also I think we're starting to feel like there maybe there's an end in sight to this whole lockdown and quarantine, situation and curfews and everything. So like, I feel like we're at the beginning of the end.
Yeah, I feel that way too, especially here in New York in America where Biden announced the vaccines will be, I'll be eligible. Anybody will be eligible by May. So hopefully that'll start getting rolling.
Yeah. That's like definitely one big piece, getting everybody vaccinated and then starting to move around again. I was thinking about, trips to take, planning trips, but it's kind of hard to plan trips right now because, everything's still so unknown. But I was remembering the last time that I saw you and the first time that I saw you in person was exactly a year ago. I don't remember the exact date, but it was a year ago this week when you were wrapping up a tour in Europe and you came through Paris and I went out with some friends and I was like, you have to come see Lady Lamb. She's wonderful. Brought some friends we went out to dinner. We went to see you and we were like, this is so much fun. We're going to do this all the time. And then we went home and the next day they announced that we were under lockdown. And so that was my last night out, my last live concert, and my last time seeing friends, practically seeing those friends. So I think that was probably a last for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So how was that tour for you and how did it end?
Well, at the risk of kind of saying things I'm not totally sure of because I never got tested, but I am 99% sure that I got COVID in Europe. And to this day, I still think, wow, if I had it, I must have been a super spreader, which just is like mind blowing to me. But essentially early on in the tour, like maybe the third day or fourth day while we were in England, I started having really serious like lung respiratory issues that lasted the entire tour. Like I felt like I had a belt around my chest to the point where the first thing I did when I got back to the States was I went to urgent care and explained to them my symptoms, but I never had a fever. So I think I may have gotten COVID, but because we didn't know a lot about it back then, like even NPR, we would have the news on and NPR had no real clue what was happening at that point. And because of that, I think that I like mentally was able to get through the tour and I never canceled the show or anything like that. I just got through it. But I will say that was a really difficult tour and really interesting because every city that we went through was closing its doors right behind us.
Yeah.
Like we went to Spain and I remember Madrid locked down as we were leaving, basically.
Wow.
And all of the beautiful scenic mountain roads had these huge LED signs that said, COVID, go to this address for information, stay home, that kind of thing. So it was a really strange time to be as I know, traveling, and far from home. And but I feel really fortunate that I got to do the whole tour and that I got to get home easily because the chaos at the airports didn't start till the day after we made it home.
Wow, you really slid like right into it. Wow,
yeah,
very cool. So then you came home, and what did you come home to?
So also kind of an interesting story, and I think many of us have interesting stories about exactly what we were about to do that we could no longer do. But essentially, I bought a house in Maine and I had been looking for a year, and I closed on it on March 11th. So I basically, and I had a tour that started March 13th. So I flew home from Europe on like the 9th. I had a rehearsal with my string players for the tour that I was about to embark on. And then I flew to Maine for 24 hours to sign on my house and get the keys, with the plan of going there 2 weeks later. Like I was gonna play the tour and then come back to Maine for the whole spring, and then figure out my life from there. But what ended up happening was our tour was canceled while we were on our way driving to it, to start it. We were on our way to Atlanta, and I got a call from my booking agent like 3 hours into the drive saying, okay, you need to turn around.
Wow.
So what I did was I dropped off my band back in New York, and I emptied our rental van of all of our gear, and I filled it with some home things from my storage unit, because for my whole record campaign, for that year, I had been living out of my suitcase. So all my things were in storage. So I basically filled the van with like a lamp and my vacuum and a love seat. And I went straight to Maine, and I was there. I was there until 5 weeks ago. And I spent the first 4 months of the pandemic completely alone, just at my empty house that I was slowly trying to build. So it was very surreal, but I was very lucky that I had a safe place to go. I have a couple acres, so I was completely isolated in all the right ways.
Yeah. You couldn't have planned that. I mean, couldn't have planned it better.
No, it was,
It's really interesting, like places like Maine, where you have a house now, not where you are at the second place, like Maine, places like a lot of places in the world have become super interesting places to live during a pandemic. And now I think a lot of people followed your lead, even though your lead started before the pandemic. I think that a lot of people moved from New York to Maine and places like that.
Yeah, I read stories all the time about how many thousands of people were leaving New York. Obviously all wealthy people, who could actually afford to leave, while, people were stuck here in the real thick of it. But it was always my intention to come back to Brooklyn. I bought a house because my sister got pregnant with her first baby, and it inspired me to be closer to family after 10 years in New York. And so after a year of looking, I found the right place that I was, remarkably priced. And again, I got so lucky because the real estate market just went crazy, this
right after
year. So I got in just in time, but it was always my intention to kind of get the house ready, get it to a place where I could rent it for part of the year so that I could afford to live in New York and kind of go between.
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan. I love hearing how people figure out how to have everything they want, because, I think in life you can't always have everything you want, but there are ways to really, design your life so that you get what you need. And so your family is in Maine?
Yes, my mom and my brother and sister and my extended family.
Wow, that's great. And you went to high school in Maine also?
I did, at Brunswick High.
At Brunswick. And that's where you started writing songs?
I started writing songs right after I graduated, the summer after I graduated high school.
And so how did that start? Like how did you get pen to paper and guitar what was your process?
Well, I was really into poetry in high school and photography and painting. So I came from a place of creativity, and so I started teaching myself guitar when I was 18, and I was just going through a really hard time. I was enrolled to go to film school in Chicago, but I took a gap year instantly when I was enrolled because I wanted to go to Guatemala for a year and do a service trip. But that was 2008. That was the year of the housing crash, the crash, the recession. And so my family was really struggling, and I wasn't able to go. And so I was faced with being home in Brunswick for a year before college while all my friends had left. And I was really upset. And so I started writing songs as a way to just kind of distract myself and cope. And it turned out to be a really amazing challenge because I was starting from zero. And so I was having to invest all of my time and energy into learning, and songwriting really helped take my mind off things. And by the time the year had passed and I was meant to go to school, I got the orientation paperwork and I decided that I didn't want to go because I had discovered my real passion. And I was like, my first thought was, well, where am I going to play music in a college dorm? Like at art school, it's not where I want to be right now. So I made the decision not to go, and I moved to Portland and I started playing shows.
Wow. So, and did you pull a band together around you, or did you do solo shows initially?
I did solo shows initially, but a kind of a sweet story is that I actually, the way that I met my first bandmate was that I had made 10 or so songs and I burned them on CDs and I left them at the counter of my record store, Bull Moose in Brunswick. And so 10 people picked up those copies that day, and the 10th person to pick it up was this guy named TJ who lived an hour away and just happened to be on a drive that day with his friend, and was headed back home when they saw the Bull Moose, and he went in and grabbed my CD and he emailed me. He was of all those 10 people, he was the one person who got in touch with me and said, wow, what a surprise to find these songs. I really love them. I live, near Portland. Are you playing any shows? And I played an open mic a couple weeks later and invited him to come, and we hit it off instantly and became best friends pretty much overnight. And he's a musician, and so he joined Lady Lamb for about a year and a half. And we would play as a duo. And so that was, 12 years ago or something. And since then he's toured with me off and on. But for the most part, Lady Lamb is a solo project, and I write all the songs alone. And then I basically hire my friends to tour with me.
Yeah, I see. Yes. So I have never seen you perform with a band, but I've seen, video clips and everything. And I think you are an amazing musician. And I really like the way you hold the band vibe together, but you also have really large, important songs that you sing in a very intimate way. You can also be very intimate and also, play to a larger room. So it's a pleasure to watch you perform.
Thank you.
Definitely. And so do you have a preference working alone or working with others, or do you like to weave between?
I like to weave between. The joy that I get, besides performing and connecting with an audience, the joy that I get is in being alone in a little space and creating, especially arranging music is like my joy. So I love to write alone, but I really love to arrange the instrumentation alone with my computer. And so I think that, that is like my passion. That's really what I want to keep doing by myself. And I have over the years gathered the knowledge that I need to really self-produce my music. But, sometimes when I'm touring solo or playing solo, I really miss the camaraderie of having my friends on stage. It's really special to be able to look over and see one of my good friends and like make a goofy face at them while we're playing together. It's just really fun, and nothing can, take the place of that. But I really like both.
Yeah. So in terms of producing your own music, do you have a process, or is each song its own journey? What do you like about producing?
Because I initially was into film editing. I was going to go to school for film editing. I really love what technology can do for art, for film and music, and I really love zooming in to the programs I use and doing micro editing. That's so what I love about production is just kind of like the sort of like mathematical elements to it, and the all the endless possibilities. There's just endless possibilities for how you arrange the instrumentation, and then also how you add effects and move things around and pan things. And I'm just really into all of that.
That's neat. And so did you just learn by doing?
Yes.
It was just sort of one question led you to one answer and on and on.
Yeah. And I just picked like my software programs that I wanted to use based on listening to interviews with musicians that I loved and kind of finding out what they used.
Yeah.
And then I just learned by doing.
Exactly. So we've got a question from Andre Mook from the Netherlands, who's joined us today. And he asks, where do you get your inspiration from?
I get a lot of my inspiration from my life and my experience. But I would say that mostly where I pull inspiration from is in long walks that I take. I'll take 10 to 12 mile walks and just with no music in or anything, and I'll just like look around and I'll see what thoughts come to me, what associations I'm making, what I'm seeing, and I'm just moved by things I see and by a lot of sort of existential questions that I'm asking myself as I'm going along. So the lyrics are most important to me. I write lyrics before music, but I would say that I find a lot of beauty and drama in mundane events like riding the train or speaking to a stranger for a second.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. So you mentioned long walks. Do you take long walks? So that's long walks in the city, long walks, I assume also in the country, in Maine. So where do you like to walk in New York?
Everywhere, literally anywhere and everywhere. It's still possible now. We're just all masked and there are less people out on the street. So it's still possible to go really far, but it depends. Like right now I live in central Brooklyn. And so I'll just pick a direction and it'll take me south toward Coney Island, or it'll take me north toward Queens, or, you know what I mean? I'll just go. I really like to walk over the bridge, one of the bridges into Manhattan. Sometimes I get a little tired and I won't do both walks, but getting to or from Manhattan one way over the bridge is really fun.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
That's what I love about the city, any city. My other city that I spend a lot of time in is Mexico City, and it's the same situation. Just you can just walk out your door and see a million new things every single day. It's so stimulating, and that's what I missed about New York, and that's why I really wanted to come back.
Yeah. So you were in Mexico City for one period of time, or is that a place you go back and forth to?
I go every year. I'm going to skip this year just because, of what's going on and everything. But I go once a year and spend anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. And each time I've gone maybe 4 times, and each time I've gotten to know the city better. And, it's like my second home. In fact, I've never been happier. I'm never happier in my life than waking up there. Every day I wake up there, I'm just like thrilled to be alive and thrilled to go outside and experience the day. And it's just, I don't know, to me, it's just the best city.
Wow.
It's so wonderful.
Yeah. And so besides walking, what do you like to do there?
Well, I oftentimes will go there and work. I'll use it as a way to write music because it's so affordable. So long walks, but often my walks aren't just aimless. There will be a destination. So I like to go to museums. Yeah. And Mexico City has amazing museums. It's full. It's a very, very full of arts and culture, and so yeah, just museums, and I'm really into food, and I'll go find a donut place or something.
Yeah, that's cool. So back to Maine, after you moved in and settled in and got your love seat in place and everything, you also built a stage on your property. Is that right? So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I have a series. My mom deemed my house the Hive. Because my moniker used to be Lady Lamb the Beekeeper. And so she lovingly came up with that nickname for the house, and I love that. So I started a series of shows on my property in the summer called The Hive, Live from the Hive. And essentially I just had socially distanced shows, a few a week sometimes, like usually on the weekends, in August and September. And I came up with the idea in June, but I didn't execute it till the end of August because I really wanted to make sure that it was safe and right. And I wanted to, figure out the best way to do it so that people felt really secure and like they hadn't made a mistake. But so I would invite about 50 to 60 people to my property, fans. I would put tickets online and they would come. They would get the address the day of, and my mom or someone would be at the door, the front of the property, checking names off the list.
Wow.
Excuse me. And I would just host these shows, and I had a small PA, and people would sit in their little clusters out on the lawn. And I would play for an hour and a half or so, and my girlfriend would build a fire while I was ending the set. And then there would be a little campfire people could stand around, and a little merch table on the porch. And it was such a success. I did 12 shows, and they all sold out within a minute every time I put them online. And they were so fun. They were so fulfilling for all of us because all of us, including me, had missed out on that kind of interaction.
Yeah. And I think, so definitely, so a much needed gathering probably each time for everybody.
Yeah.
But people didn't know where they were going when they bought the ticket?
They knew they were going to Mid-Coast Maine. So
okay.
They knew that they were going about an hour from Portland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so did you feel like it was risky inviting people onto your property or inviting people with your home address, or did you just sort of trust in the process?
Yeah, so I was at first. That was the one drawback, it seemed. And I talked to friends and family. We all agreed, what's the one kind of strange thing about this while you're giving out your address? But ultimately, and as a woman, I have to think about these things, of course, and living alone there. And so it was something that I'm glad that I put the proper thought into. But at the end of the day, what I realized was that never in my whole career have I felt threatened by anyone that I've met through music. Never. Like, maybe there'd be like, it's typical to have like maybe like someone who's like a little drunk or something, and maybe they've overstayed their welcome at the merch table for a second, but like I've never felt threatened. So I realized that the people that are drawn to what I do are, in my experience, very decent, very kind and sweet people. And I just had faith that those were the people coming to my home, and they certainly were. I felt so loved, and I felt like, wow, I'm very glad that I went ahead and did these. I'm glad now knowing that they were so wonderful.
Yeah, wow, that's neat. So it's definitely a self-selecting crowd, somebody who'd, buy the ticket to Mid-Coast Maine and
exactly.
Yeah. So there's sort of mutual trust on both sides.
Right.
So that's neat. That's like really a success story. Would you have done that if there had been no pandemic?
I probably wouldn't have thought to do it. It was just a couple of things that, came in. I was driving one day in May down the main Route 1, basically in Maine, and I saw this like marquee sign for sale, this big, beautiful, one of those, it looks like a theater marquee, but it's freestanding, and it lights up, and it has the little letters on it, and it was for sale. And I was like, oh, I really want that sign, but I have nothing to do with it. Why would I buy that? And then I realized, oh, well, maybe I could have my own little venue. And then when I was setting up my fire pit one day, I thought, oh, it'd be so fun to have like a campfire show. And I was like, well, I can't really do that. I can't crowd people around a campfire. But then when I realized I had this, pretty sizable front lawn, then it all kind of clicked. But I don't think I would have come to that had there not been a pandemic. But now that I know how fun they are, I will definitely be happy to host them when the pandemic is over in a normal year. And I'd like to be able to invite other musicians and friends to come play as well.
Yeah, that's neat. That sort of idea of making not just a space, but sort of a community around a venue that's not, it's about the community, not the commercial space. That's really cool.
Totally.
So we've got another question here, also from Andre. He asks, talking about endless possibilities, is it difficult to decide when a track is done and needs no more tweaking? And do you revisit old tracks and perhaps do new versions?
That's a good question. It can be difficult to decide when a track is done. I find that the way that I approach my songs is that I treat them. I try to take my ego out of it, and I try to make decisions based on what the song wants to be and what it's, because I find that my songs end up showing me what they want to be. And when it's not working and I'm feeling stressed over it, it might be because I'm pushing myself onto it too much. Like I'm forcing it in to be things it's not trying to be. And in that case, what I end up finding is that when I've over stacked sounds into it, when I've overdone it or made it too big, then subtraction is key in finding out when it's finished. And usually when it's finished, I just have a feeling that it is, like I know that it's right. And I'm always just trying to make sure that I'm getting to the heart of what it is, and that kind of shows itself to me when it's finished. And I have a lot of old tracks actually that haven't been properly released or were demos or came out 10 or 11 years ago as a demo, and I have a list of a few that I would love to rework and re-record or do full band versions or even just better recordings of them. So I try to actually, with all my records, I'll write all new songs for it, and then I'll slip in one old one.
And so is your process that you are writing and producing at the same time, sort of laying down tracks and listening and figuring it out?
It depends. If I start with a guitar, then I end up writing the song as a solo guitar and vocal. And that happens frequently, but oftentimes when like in a situation like this where I'm in my apartment and maybe I'm trying not to make noise, I'll start writing a song on the computer. I have a couple songs from my last record, Even in the Tremor, that were written exclusively on the computer in headphones. I have a song called Little Flaws that started with a drum beat and a synth part. And I added guitar later, but that song was actually written and built inside the production of it.
Yeah.
But I would say more often than not, my songs start as a solo acoustic and vocal.
Yeah. Then you have those pieces. So you're in Brooklyn now, and what are you putting together now for the future? What's coming next?
Well, I'm trying to build out my apartment. If I showed you the room, it's pretty empty right now. It's like my second passion in life is interior design. And so I was really stubborn about how I wanted to decorate this apartment. And so a lot of the pieces that I chose aren't coming here for 6 or 8 weeks. So I'm like waiting on a couch and that kind of thing. But I just built a little section of the place that I can make as my little writing area. And I'm waiting for like a tabletop for it. And as soon as that comes, then I'm going to start writing another record. And I'm going back to Maine a couple times this year. I have a greenhouse on my property. It's pretty small, but it's beautiful because it has super high ceilings, like at least 13-foot ceilings, but it's like the size of a small room. Like it's like 11 feet by 11 feet. Yeah. Anyway, I'm converting that into a little studio. So I'm going to start with like seeds of songs here. And then I'm going to continue in Maine where I can do vocals and make more noise and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah. That's great that you're starting with seeds of songs, bringing them to the greenhouse to complete them. That's great. Very cool. And so, yeah. And so do you have ideas for your next record, or is it again, just going to be a journey that reveals itself on an ongoing basis?
To be honest, that's how I usually write. I just kind of let it be a journey. But I will say that my last record was really hard to write. It was really painful for me to try to even figure out what I was wanting to express. And I had a lot of nihilistic days where I thought like, I have nothing to say. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to write. which is why really I was going on so many long walks to try to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think that lyrically I came to a really authentic and beautiful record. But because it was so excruciating and really just so, it really was just so, I was beating myself up a lot over it in the process. And I really don't want to repeat that. So with this record, I'm trying something completely new, which is that, at the risk of, kind of defining it too much, I'll just say, for lack of a better phrase, that I'm kind of writing a concept record using my favorite films as the sort of catalyst for trying to come to the songs.
Yeah.
Because my other favorite thing in life and in art is film. And I have been moved by so many films over the years that I think are so emotionally rich. And I would love to rewatch my favorite films. A lot of them are from the 70s. And a lot of them are female centric, with like a heroine at the forefront of the film. And I would really love to rewatch these films and try to see what happens. Like, I want to kind of get inside these characters and see if I can write a record from their points of view, and also see what that pulls out of me and my life and my memory, so that the record becomes a sort of weaving of the two.
Yeah, that sounds like a great roadmap. Do you have the films picked out?
I have a list. I have a handful, I think.
Can you share that, or is that?
I will. I'm not totally sure what films, but I will tell you two actors that I am absolutely choosing one of their films each are Jenna Rollins and Liv Ullmann. Have you heard of Liv Ullmann? Liv Ullmann, she's like I want to say she's Swedish, but I'm actually worried she's Norwegian. But anyway, she's these two women are just the most remarkable actors to me, and I cry at all their films. And so I'll probably end up picking something like Scenes from a Marriage, or The Immigrants, or some Cassavetes movie that Jenna Rollins was in.
Yeah. What I think that is such a great approach to creating an emotional space for yourself to wander around that is not necessarily your personal autobiography or, trudging up old stuff. Your record that was difficult to write, was it difficult to write because you were using the same approach that you'd used before and now you're a different person? Or was it difficult to write because you were just ready to switch gears, but you hadn't switched gears yet?
I think it was partly because I was really content in my life. I just was doing pretty well. I loved my apartment. I loved my partner. I was just kind of breezing through. And so I was having trouble figuring out the essence of why, and what could I say when I'm so happy, And I didn't want to write a bunch of fluffy love songs. In fact, I didn't even have the inspiration to do that because I wasn't inspired to sit at my desk and write a love song. I was out living it, know? And so it was just very difficult for me to figure out what I wanted to say. And like I mentioned before, I always write lyrics first.
Yeah.
So I was having a crisis of well, if I have no lyrics, I have no music, and what am I doing? And I have nothing. But I should have something. So I just felt like at moments I was forcing it, or I was just frustrated with myself and taking it out on myself a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is just going to be a really, really good way for me to give myself the space to take a little pressure off.
Yeah.
That whole feeling of, I have nothing I wake up and I'm I have nothing to say today. That's a horrible place to be. You start, it's just, it's self-deprecating in a way that I don't want to really experience while I'm trying to make art this time.
Yeah.
So I think that these women, these characters who've made such profound performances, and they really have such emotion in their work, will just help me get to my own through them.
Yeah. As you were talking about the difficulty of writing at certain times of your life, I did want to ask you, do you write love songs? Do you have a few just love songs in your body of work?
Yes, definitely. But Lady Lamb love songs are also full of anxiety. So
Yeah.
there will be like a verse that's an anxious verse about something, and then it'll switch gears into a love song. But I have a song called Deep Love that is a very lovey love song, but it doesn't start out that way. It starts out with me, the narrator, being really anxious and nihilistic, and then being able to reroute those feelings toward love and gratitude.
Yeah.
And it's like Little Flaws. That's a love song. And I have a song called Salt that is so romantic, but only for a portion of it. And I have heard stories that from a handful of fans that have walked down the aisle to that song. Wow. And I always think, wow, that's so wonderful. But I also think, oh God, I hope you turned it off at the right moment, because lyrically it gets kind of dark. So yeah, I do. They're weaved in.
That's nice. So yeah, you will talk about love, but with the other also present in the song.
Right.
Very good. So we've got a couple comments here. One thing I wanted to point out from Gene Judson of California. He says, "Liv Ullmann, Norwegian."
Norwegian. I thought so. Thank you.
And Andre Mook has asked, would you consider live streaming your shows?
I have a sort of distaste for like Zoom shows. In fact, this whole last year, I will admit that I didn't watch a single Zoom show of anybody's. Granted, I was kind of isolating myself intentionally in ways because I was really stressed by what was going on and by the fact that my career felt over in the pandemic. But anyway, I did live stream my last Hive show. It was with a string quartet, but that was back in October. And so, but I think there's something to be said about the intimacy of like I'm just using the Zoom. I don't know if Zoom is the format, but like the intimacy of a live streamed solo show where there's like 50 people in the room, you know, and you can interact with them and see their face and that kind of thing. I think that would be lovely. And I plan on doing them this winter, but I moved here instead and just kind of have been distracted by other things. And also I have trouble doing shows when I'm starting to try to get into a writing mindset. I kind of compartmentalize the two, but I think if this continues for the rest of the year in ways, I'll end up doing some.
Yeah. You have a bunch of city winery shows lined up. Is that right?
Yes.
So is that a tour?
Yes, that's the tour that was canceled in March.
Okay.
And I really hope that it can happen. And I'm holding out hope that it actually may be able to, even at a limited capacity by the end of September, if enough percentage of the country is vaccinated. But it's a 2-week tour with a string quartet, and it's all my songs that I arranged for strings.
For strings. And so how did that come about, working with the string quartet?
There's just this lovely man named Mike Bishop who is affiliated with City Winery, and he first saw me play in Boston in like 2009. Mm-hmm. And he just thought of me last year for this series. He reached out and said, how would you feel about doing some sort of stripped back? We have a series with that we're doing with artists playing with string players. And I was thrilled because I always write for strings on my records. There's violin everywhere and cello everywhere. And, because I've taught myself how to compose for instruments that I don't play, I thought, oh, this will be a challenge, but something that I can actually handle and will love doing. So that's what I was doing my last time in Mexico City. For 6 weeks, I was like every day for, 8 to 9 hours, I was writing the string parts. And I wrote, it ended up being like 98 different parts because it was whatever, like 20 something songs and 4 instruments per song. And so the tour is supposed to be me and an acoustic guitar and these 4 players writing playing these original compositions. And that was what we ended up doing in October at the Hive. We ended up performing those
Wow. And so the quartet came up to Maine for that one show?
I ended up playing with Maine local players,
Okay.
which was great.
Oh, wow. That's really very cool. We've got another question here from Cyrus Simpson. Do you enjoy traveling to inspire your music?
Oh, 100%. Yes. Yes. Anywhere. I love to I love to travel. It's, it gives me a new perspective, of course, and I can have new eyes walking around, and especially very far from home. I don't really like pop on over to like Ohio or something to write, but I like going to, to Europe or Mexico or, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so what is it about traveling that triggers new ideas or song ideas? What happens when you're moving in new spaces?
I'm just one of these people that is awed by the sights of a new place. I'll walk around, even in New York, I'll just walk around with just all day, just looking around. And it's not the architecture really that I'm looking at. It's also just like people. I love people. I love people. I love watching people. I love seeing these little tender moments between people. These little micro moments that like, they don't even know that I'm passing by. So it's just to me, so inspiring. And, I feel a lot of love toward humanity often when I'm out. And, you see some not so savory things too sometimes, like someone yelling or someone in some kind of duress. But for the most part, I find it just uplifting.
Do you write about that stuff too? The difficulties out there, the political climate, and the social?
Yeah, I don't know that I write so much about politics. Maybe in some roundabout ways. And maybe I'll write more politically now. It's a lot has happened in the world since my last record.
Right. So. Right. It's sort of, it infuses everything now, I think, politics. Yeah. It's moving forward. So what do you think the biggest difference is between before and before the pandemic and post-pandemic? What is the difference going to be like? What will we not regain, or what will the biggest change be when we get back to moving around?
I don't know. My mind goes to negative things, unfortunately. Like the things I'm worried are going to be we're going to be stuck with, which is like, while I love technology for what it can do for me, for my art, I'm not super thrilled about the idea that it we use it more now because we were all in our homes and also remote. I don't want that to be an excuse for the future to just be less together and more on our screens. That really worries me. But what I hope that we take away, what I hope that this year did for many of us, was to just give us that feeling of appreciation for what we had. Especially when it comes to how important art is, how important live music is, how important, like museums and culture, like our arts culture in the world is 100% necessary and tied to, I think, our well-being as humanity, as people. It's what gives us empathy too, and so what I hope is that we all, when we get to experience these things again, live music and that kind of thing, that we are just like, we just hold on to it and we just appreciate it and have a lot of gratitude for what we missed.
Yeah, that really nicely stated. It's funny because when I talk to my friends or talk to people about what's the first thing you're going to go do when we can go do things, pretty much everybody says, I'm going to get together with my friends.
Yeah.
I feel like it's such a like basic shared feeling that I think that I can't imagine anybody saying, yeah, I'm just going to stay in. I'm not going to go back outside.
Yeah.
I think people miss it. I think people do miss being together, you know, in real life. And I think that, I mean, I'm hoping, but I do think that people are going to really, like you said, feel grateful for the small things that make up your life, and the things that really do make up your life, like art and culture, and certainly people. So we've got another question here from Kevin Duff. He asks, which female singer-songwriters inspire you the most, as it has been International Women's Day this week?
Oh, the list. Oh gosh. Everybody who inspires me is a woman. Yeah, the songwriters, the ones that come to mind right now that I love deeply and always really have are, I love Fiona Apple, Lauryn Hill, Nico Case, who I've been fortunate to tour with a bit. I really love Bonnie Raitt. I love Chrissy Hynde.
Yeah.
I love women with like really strong, really specific and unique voices that, you know, are you put it on and it couldn't be anyone but them, you know, like Joanna Newsom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a great list off the top of
I can go on and on and on. I am definitely kind of, you know, I'm here because of all the women that came before me in music and kind of paved the way.
Absolutely. And Sarah Simpson asks, Joni Mitchell?
Oh, yes. And actually, I came to her late. I didn't grow up listening to Joni Mitchell, but probably 5 or 6 years ago was when I just like really delved in and was just completely blown away, just enamored. And now I've read like her biographies, you know, she had a beautiful book come out a couple years ago with all her like interviews. Kate Bush is another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, here's another question or another comment from Kevin. He says, no matter what it is, whether it's sharing love with family and friends or going to soccer matches or live music gigs, they will be more celebrated and not taken for granted.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
And we were due for that. We were due for a re-up on gratitude.
Yeah, recalibration. Yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah, so we've covered your distant past. We've covered your real estate activities. Your movies. One thing you mentioned earlier is that you really like to decorate. You like interior decorating. So is that something that you came to recently, or you've always worked with your environment?
It's something that's been building since I was probably 5 years old, because my dad was Air Force, and so we moved every 3 years. So from a very early age, I had to learn to be adaptable. But the first thing that I did in a new place was to build out my room with the things that I had brought so that it felt like mine. And then also just years of touring has really made me appreciate home. Like I love to travel, but I'm a super homebody. And so I love to build a space that I feel really secure in and that I feel really inspired by and creative in. But I would say that it really has gotten to be intense for me in the last few years, when I actually started just delving into different periods of design and actually having the language to describe what I liked. Because before I did that, I didn't totally understand how to describe what I liked or even find it. And compare things and compare, you know, mid-century design versus Bauhaus, you know. And so when I did some more research and started figuring that out, it bloomed for me. And actually the whole month of February, I was interior designing my best friend's new apartment because he couldn't care less, but he gave me a nice budget, and I just did the whole thing from scratch, and even got to do a reveal because he moved in a month later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I felt like I had like an HGTV show for a minute.
Oh, cool.
But I also am like a handyman type. So like I like, I have a power drill, I have a toolbox. I like installed everything myself. And so yeah, if I had a show, it would be like interior design, and I'm also putting the paint on the walls, not just picking out the color.
Right. Exactly. So is that something you would do again? If somebody said, "Oh, I've got a budget and I've got a,"
oh my God, I would be thrilled. I would be thrilled. I actually want to make. I'm getting nice photos taken of his place and mine so that I can build a portfolio, because I would love to do more. It makes me so happy.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's really nice. So there's a conversation going on the side about Andre Mooks mentions Larkin Poe after Carole King, Larkin Poe, and Andre Mook. I'm going to see Megan and Rebecca in November in Scotland, hopefully. Lucky you. So there's a lot of inspiring women who your list has. Oh, Samantha Fish is also mentioned here.
I'm not familiar with her, but I do know Larkin Poe. I've seen them live. I saw them open for Connor Oberst, and they were great. And Carole King, of course. I can't believe I forgot her.
Yeah. Very good. So excellent. So yeah, we've been chatting for a while now. Do you have any questions for me before we wrap this up?
I actually have been wanting to know since we met, what brought you to Paris?
Yeah, so that's like a long story, and it's a long story without it's not just like one thing. It would be so easy if it was like, oh yeah, for my job, I got a job, and so we had to move. But was
it always a dream of yours?
Yeah, it was something that was always something I was always doing, but I was also always kind of moving. And I had, after college, I had moved to Spain, and I lived in Spain for a couple of years. And I went back to Chicago to go to graduate school. And my idea was go to Chicago and then go right back to Spain. And then when I was in Chicago, one thing led to another. And that's when I got into playing with bands and the whole music scene, and one thing led to another. And in the end, I was in Chicago for 14 years. But around 9/11, I had just had a baby, and I just was like, we have to get out of here. I just thought that jolted me. I was like, I do not want to stay in the US. I felt like at 9/11 that we were entering a whole era of that. And it turned out we were entering a whole era of something else. But I did put the pieces in play to move. And I got my whole business, the things I was doing to make a living, which was mostly teaching online, but I got my whole business online and made the efforts to move. And it took a few years to get all the pieces in place, but we finally moved here in 2005. So that's been quite a few years now.
Yeah.
With the idea always that we could go back, and but we never had to. It's always been a good choice. But I love America, and I have mixed feelings about it. And, there certainly are problems over here too, but I really like having both worlds. And I think that that's the key thing. I'm a person who always needed both.
Yeah.
So I had to design my way of that, having that.
Totally. Well, It's inspiring as someone who wants to be an expat and move to Mexico.
Yeah.
I love that you made the trip. And it's also cool. I mean, in a non-pandemic year, you can travel so easily anywhere in Europe. You're just close to everything.
It is. It's really true. It's funny because, when you live in the Midwest, if you get in your car to go anywhere, you're driving 12 hours. And so, you do a lot of 12-hour drives 18-hour drives as a normal thing.
From Chicago, it's like, where are we going to go? I don't know, Madison. Like, it's like, you can't.
Yeah, you really have to you have to, buckle in and be there for a while. And so when we first moved here, some friends of ours from Prague were going to Italy, and they're like, come meet us in Italy for the weekend. And we're like, okay, great. It's just 12 hours. So we drove 12 hours to Italy and then spent the weekend and drove back. And our friends here were like, you did what? It was 12 hours is a long drive, I think, in Europe. I think
so too.
Shorter drives. And I do shorter drives now too. I wouldn't do that now. I think it would think, oh, it's too long. But I do like living. I love where we live, and I love living in Europe. Mm-hmm. It's the right place for me. But my sort of, I call it my Bermuda Triangle, but it's my geographic triangle really is it's France, it's the Paris area,
Mm-hmm.
New York, and Maine.
Mm-hmm.
That's the world I'm working in, and California, and California is another place that's in there.
It's really exciting to pick those 3 or 4 places that you love and go between them. That's how I like to live my life as well. I have my 3 or 4 places and go between them.
Yeah, you get different fuel from those places, and Maine is a place that is, I think, really unique in the world, and I think that. Mm-hmm. I try to describe it to people, and I think, there's also pros and cons to Maine. I have mixed feelings about it, but I love it, and I super miss it when I'm there. But how do you describe Maine to people who have never been there?
Oh, I mean, always I think of Maine as a magical place. I think people think of Maine as a magical place, people that haven't been there. But I don't even know how I describe it. I just describe it as just beautiful, and I don't even know, just beautiful. What can you say? It's just scenic and peaceful. But, and I never talk, I don't talk to people about that I don't know about it, but it's problematic too. Just like, all of the politics of Maine. It's so, there's the South and the North,
Exactly.
But my house is in Mid-Coast Maine, so it's like very, it's very like lobstermen, and it's all the cliche parts of Maine, like the buoys and the lobster boats and the coast and the lobster shacks. I mean, lobster. Which is actually why in my area, which you're familiar with because you lived around Topsom, right?
Exactly. I was born in Brunswick.
Okay, so yeah. My house is in Edgecombe. It's just near Wiscasset.
Yeah.
And so, but it's an amazing place for people want to come visit. So
yeah, the coast is like rough, rugged, and super beautiful, and it's really intense to be there.
Yeah, the rugged aspect of it is my favorite part. The Rocky Mountain.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's like part of, like, that landscape is a landscape I would never let go. I always go back and sort of get some lobster and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's very
yeah. So one comment here from Kevin Duff. He says, Hannah, you've live streamed occasionally. Do you think it's something musicians will continue with, live streaming, even when things get to some normality, as it's a new way to stay in touch with people and fans? That's something that you touched on about technology becoming more a part of our life. Mm-hmm. And I think that live streaming is something that we're going to have to get better at. I mean, in terms of live streaming music, because it's not a satisfying venue. The sound quality, no matter how good your sound quality is, it's not great.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge problem. So we'll see what happens. I think there are tech companies experimenting with sound quality, particularly. There was one called, I forget what they're called, but anyway, we'll see what happens with that. But I think definitely the cat is out of the bag in terms of communicating through live streaming. It'll be part of what we do.
Yeah, I just hope there isn't burnout. In just thinking in terms of the musician to fan relationship, where there are so many musicians live streaming, and let's say that all those live streams are maybe better quality, but they're ticketed. People still have only a specific amount of income that they can spend on entertainment. And so it just, there's people get tired of, another band I love is having live stream. Well, I've already seen them a couple times, so I'm just going to skip it, or I think it doesn't come close to the feeling of going out to a real venue, which is also just how I make my living.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Like you said, we'll see what happens. Hopefully it's a healthy mix.
Yeah. I agree with you. It'll be a mix, and hopefully it's a healthy mix. Mm-hmm. So we have been chatting for a while, and I just want to thank you so much for taking the time today from your home, your well-designed home in Brooklyn, to talk to me about everything that you've been doing and what's coming next and everything. But before you go, I just wanted to ask you one last question, and that is, of all of the things that you shared with us that you're so great at doing and being. What is your superpower?
Oh, that's so hard. I've never come up with a stock answer for that, but I think, because I don't get asked that, but I think that off the top of my head, and I actually don't know how to describe why this is a superpower, but I think that I am very empathetic. I think empathy might be my superpower. I think empathy is a superpower. People who are empathetic have compassion towards people and animals and all living things, and I feel like I have that, for better or worse, because sometimes maybe to a fault, where I feel a lot. But I hope that I can call it my superpower. But I hope that means that I can actually use it to help people in some way.
That's lovely. That's a great answer. And one final question then, just to tag on to what you just said. Do you think that your music helps people in some way?
I think that it helps. I think it has helped people. I say that from experience of meeting people and having them tell me their stories. And that's all that I would ever hope that it could do. Yeah. When I write songs, I don't set out to do anything with it really, besides for it to be authentic and true to me. Mm-hmm. And often if I write a song, any song I write, this sounds kind of like dramatic, but like I cry when I write a song. Like the tears fall at some point, and when they do, I know the song is right because it is true to me in some way, even if I'm crying, not because I'm upset, but because I'm moved. Yeah. So if I am moved by what I'm doing, then my hope is that it will move at least one other person. Yeah. And so in that, I think that music in general has that healing power. In fact, I think that of any art form, music has the most healing power. Yeah. Yeah. There's no other art form where you can stand you can sob on your friend at a show. People don't do that in front of a painting. I mean, and I love paintings, but you know what I mean? It has a special power. Yeah, definitely. On multiple levels, the vibrational state, the text, the environment. Yeah, very much so. Well, gosh, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today. This has been a great conversation. Thanks, Hannah. Thanks to everyone for the questions. Yeah, those were awesome questions. So thank you for joining us for another episode of the Hannah Judson Beat. If you liked this episode, please check it out on anchor.fm/Hannah Judson to subscribe to the podcast, because I turn these live streams into a podcast. Mm-hmm. And if you like it, you can also make a donation to support this show. You can find past episodes of the live stream on YouTube. And I'll place the link, those links in the chat area. Here's this. I'll put this here. Anyway, so everybody who came to the live stream today, thanks for showing up, and see you later. Thank you. See ya.